In this video, we're going to talk about Revelation 12, the book of Daniel, the Exodus, and he commanded the porter to watch. You see the title of the video, and hopefully you've been following along in the series on the 70 weeks, 62 weeks, war and desolations are determined. Okay, decoding Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, the 70 weeks of Daniel leading up to the 1,335 days. We've seen how the glory of Yahweh did fill the temple. In a similar fashion, we saw the glory of Yahweh, filled the tabernacle that Moses could not enter. So we're going to look at the prophecy of Revelation, Daniel, and Exodus, and how they have a perfect match of showing us the end of days time of the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, now we must interpret Scripture by going to the scribe's house, where in the scribe's house we take the treasure. Treasure in the Greek is thesaurus of things old and new, Greek and Hebrew. Therefore, every scribe which is instructed to teach the kingdom of heaven is likened unto man, which is a householder, which brings forth out of his treasure things old and new, Greek and Hebrew. Okay, so in the interpretation, we're going over Revelation, Daniel, and Exodus. Knowing first that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. It came not by the will of man, but by the holy men that God spake, moved by the Spirit. And they must be understood by comparing spiritual things with spiritual things, which God has prepared for them that love him. We have revealed to them by his Spirit. And the Spirit searches all things, which things the Holy Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual things with spiritual things. So we're comparing the book of Daniel with the book of Revelation. You cannot understand the prophecies by reading the books in themselves. You must compare what John saw. You must compare what Daniel saw. And we must look at the Exodus, because we are in a second Exodus. We are going through this process unto the porter who is commanded to watch. We have a lot to cover in this video, guys. So I'm going to move quickly. And if you have to, and I move too fast, go back over the video, get the notes, print the notes off, or get the notes in the PDF file while you're watching the video. They'll be available to you. This is really 3 messages in one. Instead of doing 3 messages, I'm going to do one. I'm going to cover it quickly. Some of it I'm going to go very fast. There may be many concepts that you don't understand, at which point I encourage you to get the notes. I encourage you to go to the video references that we have gone over. Now, I know the information on this channel for many of you is overwhelming. You don't even know where to start. A good place to start is the House of David playlist. We're going to talk about he commanded the porter to watch. Now, what does that mean? Okay, we're going to talk about, let's go over that. The House of David, what is that? Well, if you're familiar to the channel, you're familiar with the message, you would know what the House of David is. It is a combination of 4 branches of service around the temple. The elders, 24 elders, you have the singers and musicians, and in this video, we're going to sing with our harps the book of Revelation. We're going to sing the prophecy. That's blessed are those that keep the words of the prophecy. That means you sing the words, you participate in the songs, you participate in the heavenly service. Okay, so we have our harp. We're going to sing some of the songs to show you that when you do that and you keep singing, you begin to understand the prophecy. So we have the elders, we have the singers and the musicians, and we have 3, the porters. Okay, so the porters is a specific order. It's exactly what Christ is talking about in Luke 13. He commanded the porter to watch. Okay, watch ye therefore. Now that's Luke chapter 13, verse 35. There you see coded 1,335 days. So we know that. Now let's talk about the 4th branch of service, and let's talk about the porters. Okay, 4th branch of service is the army or the military. All of that you find in 1 Chronicles 24, 25, 26, 27. Go to the House of David playlist. Okay, so let's talk about, he said, no man knows the day or the hour. Okay, not the angels, not the Son of Man, but the Father only. Okay, now we don't know the day or the hour, guys. We have never said specifically, okay, this is the day or the hour the resurrection is going to take place. We're not saying that we don't know. What we're saying is we're giving you the information of what the prophecy indicates of when to watch. Okay? So that's why many of you don't believe me. You don't understand what I'm saying. You don't understand why I'm leaving YouTube. This is the last thing I'm supposed to tell you, and I'm finished, and I'm watching. Okay? So, what we're going to talk about there is the main porter is Obed-Edom. Okay? We have the notes. We're going to go into this detail to look at the instructions. So what Christ does is he says to watch. Okay, watch there is an order. It's something that you do. It's like if you work as a security guard at night, you're on guard, you're watching, right? Okay, that's what he's saying. He's giving specific instructions of what to do. Now, that word watch means to not sleep. Okay, so if we were just to say, well, we never know the day, never know the hour, never know the time, that would mean you just can't sleep at all. You have to be awake all the time. Okay? No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is to watch. So sleeping is a spiritual condition. So when he is talking about watching, it also is in Luke 12. Watch, you'll see in the old videos, I conclude each video, watch you therefore and pray that you be accounted worthy to escape all these things. Okay, now that verse is talking about watching as it relates to the cares of this world. And the previous verse is talking about the cares of the world, and the people are eating and drinking and drunken. Why? They're caught up in the world. Okay? That's why most of you will just never understand what I'm saying, because you're caught up in the world, you're caught up in the beast, you're caught up with the mark of the beast. You're not caught up in the prophecy. Okay, this is the prophecy. These are heavenly things. Things happening around the throne. Okay, so we have the porter, and the porter, what he does is he has the key. We're going to get into it. The key to the house of David. We know that Christ, it says, he will have the key on his shoulder, and he will open, and no man will close, and no man will open. Okay. He has placed before you an open door. So we'll see the key of David to the church of Philadelphia. Now, what is the key for? Just to hold it, to be a religious relic? The key is to open the door. So you put the key, you open the door. Okay. The door goes into the house. Okay? So what he's talking about is he's talking about the temple. So the porters is a specific order of those that had the key. Okay? They had the key. The key opens the door. Very, 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 very important instructions of what Christ is talking about. Okay? He commanded the porter to watch. Okay? Who were the porters? This is the order called the house of David. So when you see the key of David, that is the order of the house of David. Okay, that's how the temple works. That's how this operates. Okay, I want to explain that principle as it relates to the porters and the watching. Now, we're also going to talk about some other contracts about the fig tree. Now, how do we know that this is the time where the prophecies are indicating? Guys, there's many ways you can reach the conclusions we're sharing with the video. There's many ways you can reach the same thing. It's just a matter how the Most High communicates. The most simple way you can understand the things we're going to share in the video is 1,335 days from the time period of the woman clothed with the sun. Okay? Now, another aspect of that is the parable of the fig tree. It also teaches us this principle. Actually, let me talk about the parable of the fig tree real quick. Okay, parable of the fig tree. When you see, when the branch is tender, puts forth its leaves, you know the summer is nigh. Okay, it's not a fig tree, but let's act like this is a fig tree here. Let's demonstrate. Let's act like this is our fig tree. Okay? It talks about the parable of the fig tree in Luke 13. And what it says is that the fig tree did not bear fruit for 3 years. Okay, 3 years the fig tree didn't bear fruit, and the master of the house said, okay, dig up the fig tree, forget it, it's not bearing fruit. Then the servant says, Lord, wait, okay, let me dig around it. Okay, so that means you dig a trench around the base of the fig tree, and then let me dung it, so fertilizer. Now, if you go to the Middle East, you'll see it's a common practice where you see all the different trees and the fruit trees, when people are keeping them, they'll dig a little trench around it. Now, what the trench is because that's the rainy season. So what you would do is around the time of the fall, okay, the whole time of the summer, there's no rain, okay, it's coming in the winter. So what you would do is in the fall, before the winter, you would dig that trench so that through the course of the winter, the rain would fill in that trench and keep watering that tree. Okay, so when it's talking about the parable of the fig tree, and the servant says to the Lord, let me dig a trench around it and fertilize it, this is in the fall. And then he said, wait until the next season to see if the fig tree will bear fruit. So that is 6 months from then. So that is going to be in the spring, okay? And that's a time you would see if the fig tree was bearing fruit. So the fig tree also is telling us about the 1,335 days. Know that the summer is nigh. Dig a trench around it. That's in the fall. Okay, so he counted 3 years. Then you have another 6 months. And then you have the early figs, okay, coming in the spring, summer. So, just want to demonstrate that about the parable of the fig tree we're going to talk about. But let's get into, okay, we have 3 areas of notes we're going to cover. Let's get into Revelation, Daniel, and Exodus. All right, here's our notes. We're going to actually have 4 pages of notes in this video. The other pages we're going to go over very quickly. Here are our notes that relate to Revelation, Daniel, and Exodus. Then we have notes on this page that relate to he commanded the porter to watch, and Obed-Edom, and as we mentioned, the fig tree. We'll get into that as we go. Now, let's get into our notes very quickly, and we're going to see the concept that we've been explaining to you about the 70 weeks of Daniel. These will be literal weeks, okay, and they would be counted at precise times according to the prophecy. Now, those counting of those times is literal weeks that Daniel talks about, very famous in the prophecy. 62 weeks and 7 weeks are determined from the commandment unto Messiah the Prince. Okay? So that's what we're watching for, is the information in the prophecy related to those weeks. Those weeks come as a result of a commandment. That commandment is the first day of the 11th month, according to Deuteronomy Chapter 1, the commandment is given at that time, the first day of the 11th month. So, what we can see, as we mentioned in the intro of the video, you have the book of Revelation chapter 12, right here, Revelation 12 only. Okay? Then we have the book of Daniel. It's in a few places. We're mostly looking at Daniel chapter 9, where it tells us about what is happening in Revelation. Okay? Thirdly, we have our third witness, okay, is, of course, the Exodus. And in the Exodus is this section of the prophecy related to what it's talking about in Revelation 12. Now, what we can see is that there are things from Daniel about the 62 weeks and 7 weeks that we find in the Exodus, okay, which lead us to the events that are taking place in Revelation chapter 12. So we have Revelation 12 here, and then Daniel talks about the same thing. Some of these are mysteries and difficult to understand, but once we compare them, you see it in Revelation, you see it in Daniel, and you see it in Exodus. It is all telling us the same consistent message of the revealing of the prophecy and the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds. That's what we're watching for. Now, when we get to Revelation, okay, we saw that commandment will go forth 62 weeks and 7 weeks. Now, 62 weeks, well, there's 52 weeks in a year, right? So it's a year and 10 weeks. Now, that is a command which goes forth, and then we'll see the 62 weeks here, okay, and the 7 weeks. We're going to go through it, and we're going to explain this in multiple ways to try and make this as clear as possible. So in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, we see the sign of the woman clothed with the sun. And that is the actual sign. It actually happened on a precise date, which was a feast. Okay, and that's what tells us in Daniel chapter 8, verse 19, that the last end of the indignation would be on an appointed time. Appointed time is a Moedim. A Moedim is a feast. Okay, and that feast is in the fall, Yom Kippur to be precise. Okay, now we don't need only that sign. If you say, I don't believe in the signs of the heavens, well, we can also prove it by Daniel's timeline. Everything we're showing is multiple witness showing the same thing. So when you see that sign of Revelation 12:1, the sign of the woman clothed with the sun, it's the start of 7 years, guys. It's the start of the 7 years. You can't avoid that. You could say whatever you want. I don't believe it. It happened. Okay, it happened. We can prove it to you, multiple witnesses. Then you got 3.5 years. She goes in the wilderness. And then, as our notes come to the end, then there's a time times and a half a time. That is 7 years precisely from the sign of the woman clothed with the sun. Okay? So that is when that sign takes place, that is the start of the 7 years. All right? I know a lot of people have a problem with that, but this is prophecy. It is happening. Hopefully you understand. That is Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. Then what it says in verse 6, and the woman, she gave birth to the man-child, and she fled into the wilderness, which she had a place prepared of God, and she was fed 1,260 days. Okay. So we see the 1,260 days. You see the place prepared of God, and we can see this is the same place as the tabernacle in Revelation 15, verse 5. So what is this telling us? When the woman had the place prepared of God, okay, when this happened, this is in the Exodus. The Exodus tells us exactly when this is. It's in Exodus chapter 40. Moses built the tabernacle, put the vessels, he anointed the vessels, okay, set up everything, and glory filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tabernacle. This happened on the first day of the first month. So Exodus tells us that the 1,260 days, the precise date of that prophecy in Revelation chapter 12, verse 6, okay? Now, Daniel also talks about this as the many tekel peres. Many tekel peres. Okay, many is 1, okay, and there's 2 manys, many. So that's times 2. There are 50 shekels, okay, in 1 many. So it's 100 total. So you have 2 manys times 50, 100. Then you have peres. That means you take the many and divide it by 2. So half of 50 is 25. And then a tekel is 1 shekel. So that's 100 plus 25 plus 1 is 126. And there are 20 giras in 1 shekel. Okay, a gira, think of it like cents. Okay, so then you multiply the 20 gira times 126, and you get 2,520. This is exactly in the prophecy 7 years. So you can see the start of the 7 years. You see the woman's 1,260 days. That's the precise date of the halfway point. Okay, so you get the 2,520 days. And we can see in Exodus 40 that those 1,260 days comes precisely on the first day of the first month. Okay? All right, so that is Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, Revelation 12, verse 6, giving us precisely what the prophecy is talking about by combining Revelation, Daniel, and the Exodus. Then verse 7 talks about war in heaven. Okay? There's war in heaven. And then the war in heaven, you could see Michael and his angel fight against the dragon and his angels. Okay, so you begin to see this war taking place. Okay, now Daniel also talks about this in relation to the 70 weeks. So when we did the counting of those 70 weeks, it was the peace deal. So from the peace deal, you count 72 weeks, and that's what we're saying. It's unto the end, war and desolations are determined. So that's why we're saying Passover this year is the 62 weeks, counted from the peace deal, and it's relating to the war in heaven, which will eventually be the war in the earth and will be World War III. Okay, we believe that very soon. Okay, so there we see the war in heaven. We see the war and desolations are determined. Okay, now in Revelation chapter 12, verse 10, this is the Song of Moses. So they sing the Song of Moses. Now has come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. So that's how you understand this, guys, is by singing it. So there you see that song in Revelation 12. You can also see it in Revelation 11. And this is the Song of Moses. You see in Exodus chapter 15. Yahweh is our strength and our song. He is our salvation. I'll prepare a habitation for him. So that's what it's talking about there in Revelation 12:10. It's giving us an indication of the season of Passover. So the children of Israel sang this song when they crossed the Red Sea, and they were on the other side of the Red Sea. And remember how we saw the war in heaven? Well, that was the war. You saw Pharaoh and his army and the war coming against the children of Israel, and the waters of the flood came upon them. So that was that war, okay? And then we see the song that they sing when they get the victory. Now has come salvation and strength, the kingdom of God, and the power of his Christ. Okay? So there you see this Passover season. So now you can see on our notes, this is telling us about Passover. So we see in Revelation chapter 12, verse 11, they overcame him, that is the dragon, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony. Autos, his testimony, okay? So they overcome. What is the blood of the Lamb? That is Passover, okay? So it's obviously the Passover season, the Song of Moses, when we have the Passover, and those that overcame the beast, okay, sing this song, just like the children of Israel at the Passover. So when we count the 62 weeks from the peace deal, this brings us to the week of Passover this year, 2021. And of course, in the Exodus, it was the blood of the Passover lamb that was on the doorposts of the house. So clearly this Passover, okay, is this Passover of this counting of the 62 weeks, which is the Passover talking about in Exodus. Then what happens is after the Passover, when the children of Israel kept the Passover, they walked 3 days to the Red Sea. Okay, so this is Christ, the 3 days, 3 nights in the grave until first fruits and his resurrection. So those that overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony, they love not their lives unto death. The reason they love not their lives unto death is because their belief in the resurrection. So that's what it's talking about. It's talking about first fruits. This is talking about precisely the Feast of First Fruits on Resurrection Sunday. Okay? So then, it's from this point that you count the 7 weeks. Okay, from first fruits, this is the counting of the Omer, this is the counting of the 50 days to Pentecost. Okay? So that's Feast of First Fruits. They love not their lives unto death. That's a resurrection. Children of Israel had 3 days to the Red Sea. The waters were divided. So when the waters were divided, the same point of first fruits, and the children of Israel walked on dry ground, and Pharaoh pursued, and the waters closed on the Egyptians. That's the war of what it's talking about. So here we have the language, the children of Israel, the waters being divided for them, and the war of Pharaoh's army. Well, if we go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 15, we see the serpent cast water out of its mouth as a flood after the woman. So this is giving us the language and symbolism of the flood of the children of Israel. So the serpent, he cast water out of his mouth as a flood after the woman. But the earth helped the woman and opened up its mouth and took the flood, just like the children of Israel. The Lord helped them. They walked through on dry ground, and the flood came upon the Egyptians. Okay? So when it's talking about, it says, the end thereof shall be with the flood. Now, if we read in Daniel 9:26, it says, the end thereof shall be with a flood unto war and desolations be determined. So it's not that there will be a flood, guys, in Jerusalem. That's not what it's talking about. It's giving us this language of the flood, of the war and the dragon coming against the people of God. Okay? So unto the end shall be with a flood. Okay, so Jerusalem is a hilly, mountainous area. It's not a lower level area to be flooded. Okay, that's not what it's talking about. But it's giving us the indication that this flood is talking about the flood in Revelation 12. Okay, in that flood also we see in the Exodus. So then after first fruits, you can see we count 7 weeks or 50 days. Pentecost means 50 feasts. So we count 50 days, and we get to Revelation 12. Rejoice, all you heavens, and you who tabernacle in them. So you rejoice in the feast.
So rejoice, all you heavens, and you who dwell in them. Rejoice, all you heavens, rejoice. Rejoice, all you heavens, and you who dwell in them. Rejoice, all you heavens, rejoice. Rejoice, all you heavens, and you who dwell in them. Rejoice, all you heavens, rejoice. Rejoice.
So rejoice, O you heavens, and you that tabernacle, dwell in them. Revelation 12:12. Okay, now this is the 1,335 days, and it's the 70th week, okay, unto Messiah the Prince. So it's a week-long feast. It's a week celebration, okay? So that came as a result of what do? We counted 7 weeks. Before that, we counted 62 weeks. From the peace deal, we come precisely to this date. Now, as we said, no man knows the day or hour. We're not saying that this is the precise day anything is happening because we don't know. But it says, blessed is he that comes through 1,335 days. Now, this is the Feast of Weeks, called the Feast of Weeks in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 10, and it says to rejoice. Okay, so when it's talking about rejoice, you heavens, you that dwell in them, that's the commandment of the Feast of Weeks you read in Deuteronomy 16:10. But then it says we add one more week. Okay, so then he confirmed the covenant for 1 week. So we had 62 weeks, we had 7 weeks, now we got one more week to add. That's going to bring us to Exodus chapter 19, when the Most High came on Mount Sinai. That was the 15th day of the 3rd month. Then they had 3 days of preparation, which would have brought us to the 18th day of the 3rd month, okay? So that is this additional time, okay, that Daniel was talking about. So we have the week that we celebrate Pentecost, okay? And then you have plus 1 week, confirm the covenant, 1 more week, okay? And in that other week, then we see a revelation, the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle. Okay, so she celebrated Pentecost. Rejoice, you heavens, you that dwell in them. Rejoice in the feast. Okay, then verse 12, the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle that she would fly into the wilderness, into her place for a time, times and a half a time. So this is another 3.5 years, and this has to be the 1,335 days. Okay, this has to be in the 3rd month. Okay. Now, this wing is talked about in Daniel 9:27. You can research that if you're interested. We're not going to spend the time. Exodus 19:4 talks about the eagle's wings. When the Most High said, I did bear you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, you may ask, how do we know that this is the right interpretation of the prophecy and the right timing to count these weeks? Well, let's go over it real quick. This is a summary of the previous videos. But the first year of Darius the Mede, Daniel understood by the books of the years, would come from Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years to the desolations of Jerusalem. So 70 years, okay, Daniel identified those 70 years, and we would have to identify those same 70 years in the last days. And at the beginning of your prayer, the commandment came forth. So at the beginning of Daniel's prayer, the commandment came forth. Now understand that the going forth of that commandment will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks unto Messiah, Mashiach, the prince or ruler. And that's Christ. He is the prince of the kings of the earth in Revelation 1:5. Now, when it says Mashiach, this is referring to Cyrus. In Isaiah 44, Cyrus, my shepherd, is his anointed, his Mashiach. And in 2 Chronicles, it says, to fulfill the word of the Lord Jeremiah, and to the land enjoy her Sabbath. For as long as the land lay desolate, she kept her Sabbath. So the 70 years in Daniel's 70 week is a Sabbath. It's a rest. Okay? Therefore, 70 weeks are the Sabbath of 70 years. Okay? So you have the Sabbath of 70 years, and we would have to know in the prophecy in the last days where those 70 years are. Okay? It's in the first year of Cyrus. So in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, Jeremiah would accomplish. The Cyrus made a decree. He charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. So that's Cyrus' decree, and that would come exactly after the 70 years. Then the 62 weeks can mean years. So Darius the same. In the prophecy, Darius Cyrus is the same figure. The Median received the kingdom, son, 62 years. Okay, you can read about that in Daniel chapter 5, verse 31. Okay, and Darius, son of Ahasuerus. So that's the book of Esther. So we come to 62 years, okay, which we'll explain, but you can see the prophecy talking about 70 years, talking about 62 years. And in the book of Esther, when it's talking about this same Ahasuerus, Esther was taken to the king Ahasuerus in the 7th year and set the royal crown. This is marking the Revelation 12 sign of the woman clothed with the sun, which we saw earlier. So those 7 years is what we call the tribulation period, 7 years, okay? So that would start precisely in this year of Ahasuerus. So how is that? Basically, you see it here. If we count the years, 1948 plus 62, 2010, that's the year of Ahasuerus. That's when we begin to count the 7th year till Esther is crowned. And she's crowned in the year of Cyrus Darius. Then you have a year of rest, Shabbat. Okay? You see the rear, yes. In the midst of the week, midst of the 7 years, he will cause the sacrifice and oblation to rest, cease. So the word here is Shabbat. Used of when God rested the 7th day. It's also used in the Jubilee. Okay, in the Jubilee is a Sabbath of years. Keep the Sabbath, 7 Sabbaths of years. Okay, so that tells us that we count 62 years, you count 7 years, then you have 1 year of rest. This year of rest is the 70th, is the counting of these years, the 70th year. Okay. Now the host is given against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. Okay, so what will happen is during that you have the host given, and then you have a year of rest. So then the daily sacrifice is taken away afterwards. All right. So we have 1940, we have 62, 7 years, and 1 year of rest. Then it says he will confirm the covenant for 1 week or 1 more year. All right. So this will conclude at the peace deal. In the first week of the 11th month, he shall confirm the covenant, which is the peace deal, with many for 1 week. Okay, that January 22nd, 2020, this is the peace deal. This is the commandment. Now we do is we begin to count the weeks. Okay, now this is all review, guys. It's going over your head. You don't understand what I'm saying. These are other videos. Okay, we have talked about this. But what we want to emphasize in this video is the rest year. Okay, so we do the same thing. Before we counted 62 years, we counted 7 years. We had a year of rest. We had confirmed the covenant 1 year. Now we're counting from that commandment, from the peace deal, we're counting the weeks. Okay, in the Enoch calendar, you would then, from the first week of the 11th month, the priest course was Ezekiel. The week was January 19th through the 25th. You add 62 weeks. You come to Passover, which is the 3rd week of the 1st month, and the priest course is Shechaniah, and that was March 28th through April 3rd. Okay, so during Passover, you have Passover. Remember, we had the 3 days, and then from those 3 days, it's from the Feast of First Fruits, you then count 7 weeks. So obviously the 7 weeks are in the prophecy. They're in the feasts. You have to know the feast, guys. So Daniel 9:25, unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. Okay, so from first fruits, these are the 7 weeks Daniel's talking about. Deuteronomy 16:9, 7 weeks you shall number when you put the sickle. You shall keep the feast of weeks with a tribute or a census, and you shall rejoice. Okay, that's where we're singing, rejoice, all you heavens and you who dwell in them. Okay, rejoice before Yahweh, that we read in Revelation 12. Okay, now there also, remember how we have before, we have a rest week. Okay, so that rest week is Pentecost. So once you count the 7 weeks, you come to Feast of Pentecost. It is a week-long feast. Some people have a problem with this. That's your problem. You come to the 2nd week of the 3rd month, priest course, Ephes. Okay, May 23rd, 29. This is what we're saying is the time period of the 1,335 days. It is Pentecost. It is the 50th day. It is the Feast of Weeks. There is a blood moon. I think it's May 24th. That is the 1,335 days, also called Daniel's 70th week. Okay, so remember how the 70th week you are to rest. So that's a feast week. It's a rest. Then we have confirmed the covenant 1 week. Okay, so then we have an additional week. Now this is what we're sharing, which is new information in this video about this other week. So you come to 1,335 days. Blessed is he that comes to 1,335 days. But we're saying there's other things to watch for. So then, okay, there would be the 3rd week of the 3rd month. This is the priest course, Pethaniah. This is May 30th to June 5th. Okay, and then this is you adding the week, and this is the Mount Sinai. We showed you earlier the 15th day of the 3rd month. They had 3 days of preparation unto the 18th day. So once you come, you had the rest. Okay, you rest. You have the week of rest, which is a week of Pentecost. The week following that is Mount Sinai. Okay, so we believe Christ in his first coming in Acts 2 was Pentecost. When the Father came on Mount Sinai, it was Pentecost. So we believe that when Christ comes, it is also Pentecost. Okay? It's somewheres around here, guys. We don't know the day and the hour. Okay? But then we have, add 1 week to that. Okay? So then it goes longer. Okay? So there's confirm the covenant 1 week. So then we come to the 4th week of the 3rd month. And this is priest course Ezekiel. Priest course Ezekiel is how this started and it ends. That's June 12th. June 6th to the 12th, 2021. This brings us to the king's decree in the book of Esther, which is the 23rd day of the 3rd month. This is when the king said, write in the king's name and seal it with the king's ring to reverse the letters of Haman. Make ready and avenge yourselves. Okay, so this is war. This is like Armageddon. And this is marked by an annular solar eclipse. Okay, so the king's scribe were called in the 3rd month, the month of Sivan, the 23rd day. In that week, in that time period, guys, there's an annular solar eclipse, June 10th, 2021. This is the path of visibility of the solar eclipse on June 10th, and it starts in northern Canada, passes over Greenland, and goes into Russia. So this is a sign for us, just like we saw the locust sign over China with the virus. Now we have the sign of World War III. War and desolations are determined. Now to show you what we're talking about, we have the Feast of Weeks here, and in that you have the 1,335 days. And then on May 25th is the blood moon. Okay, so that's the rest week. Okay, then when we talked about Esther, that's the 23rd day of the 3rd month. That's here. And then a few days later, this is the solar eclipse. This is on June 10th. This is the solar eclipse that we showed you. So guys, the priest course here is Ezekiel, as you can see. So guys, this video is running too long. I'm going to conclude it here, and I'll do the next video on the porters. So what I'm going to do in the next video, I'll leave the notes so you can look at the notes, you can get ahead of it. But in the next video, we're going to talk more about Esther, the 23rd day of the 3rd month, what's going on there. And we're going to present the rest of the information on the porters in Obed-Edom. Thanks for watching. The notes will be in the description field of the video. And be sure to follow along the playlist on Daniel's Timeline playlist. Get the notes. They will be in the Daniel's Timeline notes in the PDF file. And fear God. Give glory to him for the hour of judgment to come. Worship him that made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. Amen.